Sirius and Orion are not the frames the game tells you they are. In the arsenal, we're shown a couple details. 1. They're listed as damage and support frames, but not crowd control and survival. 2. Their description calls out a constant battle for supremacy and how they rain cosmic destruction. If this is how you expect playing them to feel, they will feel bad. Dismiss the slogans they bear, and I'll show you where they really shine. I'm TheKengineer, let's solve a practical problem. There's a lot to talk about with these two suns, some of it practical, some more of a problem. So I've split this video into two sections based on that, to let you get to the meat of the topic first. Timestamps as ever are in the description. Sirius and Orion represent two expressions of the same sun, carrying with them 2 passive abilities and 7 active abilities. Passively, they provide a 45% buff to efficiency for the next 2 abilities after swapping which sun is active. This applies regardless of how you swap and is additive to your efficiency stat up to the 175% maximum. The other passive is that if you cast and drop below 50 energy with the active sun, he'll leech energy from the inactive sun back up to 50. This is great for supporting cheaper abilities, but anything more expensive will still be locked out to you without a pickup. Both suns have independent modding, independent stats, their own energy pool, ability timers, and even buff bar. A buff applied to one sun doesn't necessarily apply to the other. While you have either one active, the other sun becomes autonomous, doing their own shooting and casting like a Spectre would, but invulnerable the entire time. In exchange for this invulnerability, the inactive sun only deals 25% of normal damage. Great for distraction and status priming, but it won't be an AFK auto farm. As often crops up with features like this, DE don't like AFK strategies. So what do they do individually then? Sirius has 3 unique abilities of Coronal Ejection, Jade Stars, and Light Sanctuary. Coronal Ejection throws his scythe forwards, affecting a line of enemies both on the outward and return journeys. This deals a low amount of damage and applies heat procs, scaled with ability strength and global status chance buffs like Citrine's Prismatic Gem. On the return journey, any pickups like ammo and orbs will be dragged to you, a discount greedy pull if you will. The damage is low, the heat procs mostly serve to reduce enemy armor and to otherwise make them briefly panic. There's some issues connected to all that, but we'll cover problems in the second half of this video. Jade Stars is a damage follow-up ability, applied to both Sirius and Orion. When you deal damage by any means, one of the stars will launch itself at the damage target and then explode. This explosion deals heat damage to all enemies in its radius, with heat procs again scaled by strength and global status chance. While it is tied to a trigger of you dealing damage, the ability does also have fire rate limits. From my own measurements, it can achieve a peak fire rate of about 18 shots per second, quickly exhausting the 7 stars you have at maximum. Stars constantly regenerate at about 6 stars per second, so at maximum effect you can launch 10 stars in just over half a second, before becoming stuck at the 6 per second regen rate. These values are approximate from recorded tests, going literally frame by frame as the values aren't shown in game. At a base 500 heat damage, this is either a tiny increase to your DPS, or you're really under-equipped for anything more than a Star Chart mission. Lastly for Sirius is Light Sanctuary. This is an effective defense ability, despite some downsides. It can expand to cover a large area, providing up to 75% damage reduction to all allies in the zone, including companions and even mirror defense objectives. Not only that, it provides a constant health healing that scales with your strength, and can passively revive any ally in the zone, including both your own Sirius and Orion. The zone does take 10 seconds to spool up to maximum range and effect, and the revive perk has a 60-second cooldown per target. However, as a layer of defense, one atop many on this frame, it is a solid survival and support tool. Recasting will refresh a duration from inside the zone, or cast a brand new unspooled zone in a new location if you're not inside an active zone. You can only have one active at a time. To be quite honest with you, Light Sanctuary is the only noteworthy ability Sirius brings to the pair for most missions. Again, more on that later. For Orion, his 3 unique abilities are Gravitic Slash, Astral Shell, and Event Horizon. Gravitic Slash will swing in an arc in front of you, covering 135 degrees. The ability card says 67.5 degrees, but it actually hits that angle in all directions from your aim. Enemies hit will take a small amount of damage and bleed, while losing both shield and armor based on your strength. With 200% strength, you'll wipe all defenses in one swing, or just 164% strength to remove all armor if either sun is equipped with corrosive projection. In terms of function, this is almost identical to Tharos Strike from Styanax. Same angle, same defense reduction, slightly smaller range of 8 meters instead of 9, and cheaper to cast. The main difference is in dealing more damage and applying slash procs rather than healing the caster. Astral Shell is a very effective distraction tool. On cast, both Orion and Sirius become shrouded in energy. On either of them taking a hit, stagger, or knockdown effect, Astral Shell will deny the hit and create a decoy. This decoy only persists for a few seconds, but will draw almost all enemy gunfire while active due to enemies perceiving it as a higher threat. So long as an enemy can see you and the decoy, even Xmas units will prefer to shoot the decoy. This won't protect you perfectly, with AoE damage still hitting you by definition, and a 5-second cooldown on new decoys making it less effective on the go. Still, being able to make enemies of any level pay attention to something other than you for a while is a good way to not get killed. Do be aware that your own self-stagger, such as from close-range glaives, will also trigger the decoy. Combined with both suns getting the buff and the inactive sun being able to draw fire while invulnerable, this gives you a total of 3 distractions at once pretty much all the time, massively reducing the amount you need to tank. Finally for Orion is Event Horizon. This visually stunning ability will ragdoll and group up all enemies in range vulnerable to crowd control, with no line of sight required. The visual of the ability doesn't reflect your actual range stat, unlike abilities like Bastille and Light Sanctuary. Visuals aside, max range modding means it can drag in every vulnerable target within 22.4 meters. It's also one of the longest lasting crowd control abilities in the game, and you can extend the duration. Hitting Event Horizon with either sun's first ability adds time based on the active sun's duration stat. Orion's hits will also send the Event Horizon away from him, while Sirius will pull the Event Horizon closer. Event Horizon drifts around with apparent friction, so after the initial cast and any scythe-based redirection, it'll quickly lose speed but never quite sit still. Keep this in mind when trying to cover new areas with its whirling doom. Unlike with Sirius, all 3 of Orion's abilities have clear value at different levels. Cheap defense strips, damage denial, mass distraction, and roaming crowd control. Across the 2 suns then, 4 out of 6 abilities are decent or better, with 3 of them being defensive. This all brings us to their shared ability, Celestial Clash. Charged up by casting other abilities as either sun, Celestial Clash allows the suns to face off against each other, wiping out enemies as collateral bystanders to the self-sibling rivalry. Well, that's how it's pitched. Celestial Clash requires 7 other abilities cast to reach full power, then cast Clash itself, and then you clash the suns up to those 7 times. While the ability is active and not concluded, you can fly around, tap dodge to blink, and may recast the ability at any time to end it early. For each clash, the damage dealt is derived from the stats of the active sun for that clash, based on if you choose left or right. If your choice matches the UI, which itself matches the constellation stars your prior abilities loaded up for you, then you also gain a damage and critical chance buff on each clash. Each matching clash raises the damage by plus 150% and applies a flat plus 50% critical chance. By the 7th clash, that's 11.5 times base damage and 350% critical chance, meaning either a tier 1 or tier 2 red crit. The critical damage is 2 times, so each critical tier is 100% more damage, multiplicative with the base damage buff. While this can lead into apparently high numbers, it is limited. Not only are you casting 8 abilities to begin the assault, you then spend the time making the clashes happen, all while unable to do anything other than fly, blink or clash. The sealing of damage only applies at the end of the ability, and then only within line of sight where you dash to in making that clash happen. But not to discourage you, these limitations of damage and line of sight do not matter for 2 things in particular: the flight and the crates. Flying around while Celestial Clash is active costs no ongoing energy drain and has no timer. You get to fly based on movement speed, not sprint speed, and blink based on your particle velocity bonuses. This can be a quick way of travelling around, although not quite as quick as Titania. For crates, Celestial Clash ignores line of sight for damaging objects. Any crate caught in even the first clash will be obliterated, allowing Sirius and Orion to be surprisingly effective crate busters that can fly up to the hard to reach spaces with ease. If you do want to use them as crate busters, including the loot finding ability Golden Instinct, do not subsume over either sun's Celestial Clash. When subsuming onto Sirius and Orion, only one of them surrenders an ability for the injection, and you can only subsume onto the primary sun. That's based on your quest choice or updated choice at Pontis Tower. However, while this leaves the Unchosen Sun with their version of Celestial Clash, they cannot cast it as they have no one to clash with at that point. For this reason, having Sirius as your primary sun is largely best, allowing you to replace his pretty unhelpful Jade Stars ability. He can't make use of it. On the topic of Helminth, you get two abilities from Sirius and Orion. Both Astral Shell and Jade Stars become available via the Helminth system when you offer this duo to it. When subsuming onto other frames though, you have to pick between those abilities. You don't get both. I also cover that more in the second half of this video. Overall then, the suns of two mild to forgettable scythe attacks, a triple dose of defensive tools, a largely unhelpful damage enhancer, and a highly conditional damage nuke. This is why I say the frame pair is not as it is sold. They are excellent survivors. See this clip from a Steel Path mission where I'm not dodging, not using decoys, not even trying, and they still just don't go down under the combined attacks of a mix of enemies. Sure, yes, I'm using some powerful tools to assist that, like my Sentinel's Guardian and Arcane Aegis. Good defense comes in layers, and this pair has many such layers. If Oberon is a paladin, with his healing and smiting, then Sirius and Orion are clerics of the void. They tank, control and debuff, saving the wrath of the heavens for special occasions. So let's talk setups. The greatest function for both Sirius and Orion is coverage. If their abilities aren't given the range to be useful, they will just flounder. For that reason, a very high range is our first focus. Second, they both feature a matching breakpoint. For Sirius, it's at 167% strength to get the maximum damage reduction on Light Sanctuary. For Orion, it's at 164% strength to get total armor removal with Gravitic Slash and Corrosive Projection. Duration is useful for keeping buffs and debuffs active, so again, both frames want that. Lastly, for efficiency, both get the 45% passive buff on swapping stun at least every second cast, so we don't need to worry too much about energy efficiency. Bringing it all together, they end up demanding basically the same stat focuses, and thus the same build. Maximizing our range while overextended, we then need at least plus 127% strength to reach Sirius's breakpoint. Blind Rage and Intensify give us 129%, almost perfectly covering the breakpoints at a manageable cost to efficiency. This leaves the rest of the mod slots open to be range, energy max, duration, and a backup defense in Rolling Guard for those most intense moments between defensive casts. I've slotted in Natural Talent for casting speed, which also affects the clashes in Celestial Clash. If you put Archon Shards on for casting speed instead, swap that out to the final range mod of Stretch to truly maximize the benefits. Arcane wise, Aegis provides another very strong tank tool. It works well with Augur mods for shield gain, and Light Sanctuary to help make shield hit points more resistant. Arcane Energize is our core energy income, given that the only sustain Sirius and Orion has is Sirius dragging pre-existing orbs to the pair of them. If you find either your tank or energy is plenty enough though, you can flex out into other choices, like Arcane Hotshot for a critical boost from Sirius's heat procs. What we get with this is a pair of frames who can control the largest areas possible, cover the greatest zones in a protective sanctuary, fully armor strip the longest cones, and apply the Celestial Clash out to the greatest ranges when you can manage its line of sight limitations. As survival and crowd control are well covered, any subsume would likely be best as a damage enhancement, one that far eclipses what Jade Stars can do. Whether you go for raw damage buffing or something more well-rounded and nourishing, those will usually work best. If you're more interested in casting support, Bright Bonnet both provides strength and energy, as well as no way for me to turn this one into a pun. While this is an all-rounder setup, it's already limited by the broad demands of Sirius and Orion. We can specialise just slightly though, without hollowing them to a husk. Swapping Intensify for Precision Intensify, we can pump an extra 60% strength into Celestial Clash. More than that, we can also swap out Jade Stars for Evade. Evade will only affect Sirius this way, but that's fine. We can put Arcane Crepuscular onto Sirius to grant more strength and a hideously strong critical damage buff. This takes it from a 2x critical damage to 5x. Compared to without the Arcane, Celestial Clash on a yellow crit increases in damage by 183%. Up at the final clash, the buff is 285%. All you need to do is be invisible. This setup, however, does mean you'll need to be sniping in between clashes to keep Evade's duration up. Without that, the invisibility will go onto a cooldown and you'll be down both your damage and your safety. This is currently bugged, so that swapping Sun will remove the cooldown, but there's no telling how long that'll be around, and relying on it is literally bug abuse. don't expect that to stay. If you don't want to shoot to maintain evade, your remaining option is a Shade or Cuirass Companion. These can both make you invisible on being close to enemies while not using weapons. This invisibility is inconsistent, especially when a good nuke will make you no longer close to enemies, just corpses. It also doesn't carry over between the suns consistently, making it hard to rely on being in the right place at the right time. But when everything aligns and you cast the majority of abilities with Sirius, he can then unleash a lot of invisible, powerful clashes. All the while, Orion doesn't need to be modded for that. He can keep the original build just fine. You probably don't want to fiddle too much, as it'll still account for at least 2 clashes of Celestial Clash. Ensure your first 2 casts of abilities are always with Sirius, and your final 2 clashes will always use his modding for maximum effect. Largely, these frames are their setups locked in, for if you try to break from the mold too much here, well, you might as well start considering a different frame entirely. It's not bad for a frame to have some core stats you strongly want to work with. Let's face it, a low strength Rhino is just dead weight, and a low duration Volt is a sparkler with performance issues. For Sirius and Orion, neutral strength makes them achieve little of note, while even moderate range is just not enough to make them stand out. While you can drop overextended to get back strength, tearing 9 meters off Sanctuary and 7 meters off Event Horizon is a lot. You gain a mod slot to reinvest, but for what? Yet more survival? It's not worth it as far as I can see. Now, I've had a significant number of people express frustration with this pair of frames, and indeed at first I was struggling to see their value. This is where the problems come in. In terms of marketing and questline, there is this strong focus on their clash, their rivalry, being cast as this powerhouse, destroying everything around them. While line of sight restrictions on potentially spammable nukes makes perfect sense, there's no denying the busy work that goes into getting their nuke together, only to have it fizzle on a doorway. 7 ability cast to charge up, an 8th cast to launch, and then 7 swings to bring it to the cinematic crescendo with an extra firing delay on the finale. Sure, that leads to a bunch of damage, but not before you've spent a considerable amount of time shoving energy into actions for the sake of being able to hit the LOS bomb. When you combine this with the requirement to swap Sun, meaning a mix of taps and a hold cast, or roll tap cast if you invert their inputs, it can feel a bit jank. And indeed, jank is the single most relevant word to the issues involved in Sirius and Orion. Sirius's Scythe deploys heat procs. Sure, a heat proc reduces armor while active, but more than one heat proc does a single thing only: deal more damage over time. Unless you're really stacking strength into it, and this will cost you elsewhere, it'll usually not be a noteworthy amount of damage. Instead, it'll be setting up enemies with heat procs with no modding bonus on them. Due to Heat Inherit, this will now weaken every other heat proc applied by weapons. Not only that, heat procs cause enemies to panic. Panic as an animation is able to block many other animations, including animations that would open up targets to various finishers. These little oddball interactions can cause sticking points for you and allies, where damage drops or functionality fails because you, or your other frame, threw the Scythe. That's jank. For Orion's Scythe, it's a little conflicted. Having removed defenses, the damage proc it is delivering is Slash. Slash is most powerful when bypassing armor. With no armor in the way, it's just the weakest prop type. It's 35% base DPS rather than the 50% of heat or toxin, with none of the AoE of gas or electric. It's thematic, but mechanically mismatched. Jank is also present in setting up Sirius and Orion. Due to how they were made, with Sirius as the core frame and Orion as the exalted frame, you can only ever have one Orion. Build as many Sirius as you like, you'll always have one Orion with one form arrangement and one set of configs, permanently. With these frames being a little unforgiving on build variety, limited configs and former ends up not really being an issue, but it is still jank. Want to subsume different abilities around the place? You can only have subsumes on the Chosen Sun. If you switch at Pontis Tower, you can then put subsumes onto the other one, but you'll notice your previous subsume choices have vanished from the now unchosen Sun. Worry not, you've not lost resources, swapping back will return the original subsumed abilities, while again wiping them from the other Sun. So no matter what, your configs will only show one Sun with subsumes at a time. Not unworkable, but it's an extra trip to Pontis Tower if you want to change who gives up an ability. The Suns are bad at sharing companions, bad at sharing Helminth, bad at sharing configs, and even bad at sharing weapons. If you have an Incarnate gun activated, there's a chance that swapping Sun and back will cause them to just deactivate the Incarnate. I've not found the root cause in my own testing, but it happens enough to be frustrating, especially if that charge was hard won against difficult to hit weak spots. I can appreciate, on a technical level, that this is some serious test of the game engine limits. Programming is not as simple as asking a computer in plain English to just do what you want. That appreciation, however, doesn't make stubbing the proverbial toe on the table leg of jank any less annoying. A number of the design aspects of Sirius and Orion feel restricted, as if to find a way to make 7 abilities only as good as 4. Take Event Horizon, which allows you to control it. On a normal Warframe, you control similar features by using tap or hold to navigate it around. With Sirius and Orion, you're instead required to spend energy on casting either variant of your first ability to make those moves. With Light Sanctuary, it has a 10-second spool up in every new location. That's 10 seconds post-cast where healing isn't as strong, defense isn't as strong, and coverage isn't as far. I'm not sure what value that spool up adds, just a penalty for wanting to be somewhere else. Likewise on casting choice, not swapping leads to making no progress on the 4th ability. Modding both suns to be effective throughout the clash, but otherwise having dud clashes, is another stumbling limit. And yet, despite the inactive sun casting abilities for you as you run the mission, those casts do not count as Celestial Clash. Only you personally can advance it. When using Celestial Clash, you are locked into moving, blinking, clashing, or stopping the ability. We only recently had this limitation removed from Hildren, finally allowing her to do more than aura farm as her shields ran out. Now it's Sirius and Orion's turn. At least with flying and blinking around, they have 3-dimensional movement, though I will note that the vertical movement axis is locked, unlike flying with Titania and Wukong. The blink can be repeated as soon as the animation ends, but there's no input buffer to allow you to seamlessly chain blinks one into another. As good as the flight is, it has those stumbles. And not to forget, these two suns have no synergy with their own signature melees. No ability interaction, no passive buff, no slam supporting abilities, no melee supporting abilities really. None of that comes together. So while Sirius and Orion are defensive, survival capable frames with a flashy control ability and respectable power in their ultimate, they have issues. Technical issues, thematic issues, gameplay issues, input issues, setup issues, interaction issues, marketing issues, and synergy issues. I mean, there's the graphical issue of Light Sanctuary being entirely visible only with medium or high particle system quality. Other abilities you can see without issue when that is set to low, but the Sanctuary just vanishes entirely. That was a fun one to find and unpack. In all of my testing, I can honestly say the only time I've really been satisfied that I chose to bring Sirius and Orion was an EDA, and then solely as I could place a Light Sanctuary on the mirror defense objectives. The passive health drain on the objective was slowed 4-fold, and allies had a clear safe space to return to. Otherwise, a nuke with multiple stages of setup with 4 stashes and build up is not calling to me. Earlier, I only briefly touched on the usage of Arcane Hotshot, because it means either heat procs from frequent casting of Coronal Ejection, which is not a great ability, or keeping the even less useful Jade Stars just to power it. Sure, with some Nidus powered buff soup, these abilities can start to get somewhere, but then a lot of things can with Nidus powered buff soup. Which brings me to one final point, a Helminth point I've saved for last. Jade Stars is a terrible ability on Sirius. It has no synergy, and provides very little damage increase compared to the damage weapons deal. But what if it's not being paired with weapons? Jade Stars has a strange feature of being an ability which appears to target enemies in response to dealing damage, and yet the projectile it fires does not care for line of sight. So rather than Sirius and Orion with their restricted application, Jade Stars can be subsumed onto other frames where damage is the limit instead. This includes frames like Oberon, Banshee and others which deal damage constantly but weakly in large areas. Jade Stars subsumed onto them will respond to that constant tickle damage with an AoE heat strike. Heat damage over time stacks indefinitely, removes half of armor, and the AoE means grouped enemies will also square the scaling effect across each other. Now with Nidus powered buff soup, instead of it being poor damage turned good, its good application being turned into stupid results. At this point, I must again do my due diligence and remind you, AFK farming strategies are not welcome in Warframe. Play actively or don't play. The reason I am compelled to say that is because this is a very passive combination. Jade Stars plus some persistent or even channeled damaging zone, and you're good until one of the abilities expires. In lower level missions especially, where damage optimization isn't needed, this can be ruthlessly efficient in terms of actions per minute. Nova's portals got nerfed because they could be used to create infinite damaging zones that farmed the mission for you. I would not be surprised if Jade Stars also gets bonked in some way. Not because it's too good with Sirius, but because it's abusable by other Warframes. I think at this point you can see why I've split this video into two sections. There's a lot of potential in the design of Sirius and Orion, but too many sticking points, too many letdowns. How they look and how they play don't mesh, and overall, they're just not the frame for me. Who knows, maybe the frames will grow on me later, maybe they're exactly what you're looking for today, and if so, I trust the builds will do you well. In any case, that's all from me for now, so as always, air dash, big clash, and fight well, Tenno.